the Wrestle Havoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the Wrestle Havoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the Wrestle Havoc Podcast, here with my AEW Dynamite review from January 4th, 2022. It is a new year and a new era of All Elite Wrestling, and I will give you my thoughts on this review right here on the first edition of the Wrestle Havoc Podcast of 2023, and the first time since I've been here for a couple of months now. It's been like forever in my opinion, but yeah, man, it's great to be back. We're going back to business right here with the AEW Dynamite review from January 4th, 2022. A new era in AEW, as I've stated before. We have a new look, new set, but the same attitude that we get from All Elite Wrestling almost every freaking week. AEW right now looks like to be on the right track. 2022 has really been a year in which AEW was definitely tested a lot. There was a lot of positive in AEW. Business was definitely up, but at the same time, there was a lot of negative. Primarily, of course, you guys all know the all-out, or I should say, brawl-out fiasco that happened with CM Punk and the Elite. We don't have to explain. You guys already know what had happened. But what happened after that whole fiasco happened? Well, of course, they had the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions in which they crowned Jon Moxley as the champion. That led to, of course, Full Gear, which I, by the way, attended, which led to MJF winning the world title, and MJF is your AEW world champion, and so far, his title run has been absolutely fantastic, and right now, his feud with Bryan Danielson is definitely one that I'm 100% looking forward to. Of course, we had the Best of 7 series with the Elite and Death Triangle. Next week in the LA Forum, we have the final match, which will be a ladder match, or I should say the Escalera de la Muerte ladder match between the Elite and the Death Triangle for the AEW Trios titles. Of course, the elephant in the room, that I should say, is, of course, Mercedes Moné. Yes, Mercedes Moné, a.k.a. Sasha Banks. Is she going to show up next week at the Forum as Saraya's mystery partner? Now, granted, Saraya did say that Toni Storm was her partner this week on Dynamite, but is she really her partner this week on for next week on Dynamite? We'll have to wait and see, but I do not think it's Toni Storm at all, especially after the look that Hikaru Shida gave in that backstage interview with Renee Paquette. But before I get on with all this craziness with AEW Dynamite, make sure to like and subscribe to the Wrestle Havoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring. I urge, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Of course, the Wrestle Havoc Podcast is available on audio platforms as well. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to listen to the Wrestle Havoc Podcast in audio format, it is available on all of those platforms as well. I'm going to try to get the audio form of the podcast up and running once again, because throughout the last couple of videos that I did before I took my long hiatus, I didn't really post a lot of them on in audio. So I'm going to start going back in the audio format again. So yeah, we're going to get that up and running, but make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast in order to get more content. We're going to be starting off 2023 with a bang with this Dynamite review. Overall thoughts on this show. I thought this show was absolutely fantastic, by the way. You know, a lot of people say AEW has been on a downward spiral, especially last year. I don't want to necessarily say that they have been on a downward spiral. If anything, I would say that they have been, quite frankly, tested a lot. And, you know, there was a lot of unfortunate circumstances. Of course, AEW got hit really bad this past summer with the injury bug. But also that led to the, I don't want to say departure of CM Punk. Now, we do not know if he will come back or not, but we're going to have to wait and see. But there's a lot of things going on, a lot of negative stuff, a lot of the backstage drama, which a lot of people view AEW as, this whole place where all these wrestlers just do not get along. That's the unfortunate truth, but it's the case. But do I think AEW has improved ever since All Out? I definitely do. I feel like they moved on from the situation, and I feel like they're definitely on the right track, especially now. If you really look at all of their champions right now, the majority of all their champions are homegrown talent. You have the Acclaimed as the tag champions. MJF is the world champion. Darby Allin is your new TNT champion, and I'll get to that later on in the review. Of course, Orange Cassidy is your All-Atlantic champion. Death Triangle is your Trios champions. Now, granted, Pac was a quote-unquote ex-WWE guy, but the Lucha Bros never wrestled in the WWE, so I consider them homegrown in my opinion. But, yeah, man, the majority of the champions in AEW are all AEW originals, if you really think about it. And AEW is really putting more of a focus on their homegrown stars. A lot of people criticized AEW. I wasn't necessarily one of them, but I definitely understood the criticism of AEW signing a bunch of all these ex-WWE guys like, of course, Andrade, which didn't necessarily work out for him, in my opinion. Malachi Black. At first, it worked really well, but really last year with the House of Black really did not have that much of an importance on the show. Now that they're back, I feel like they have more importance on the show, in my opinion. Miro, we do not know where the hell Miro is, to be quite honest with you. We do not know what they're doing with them. But, a lot of signings that AEW has done. Athena, I was about to be a little more skeptical of Athena. But what they're doing with Athena now, especially as the ROH Women's Champion, I think it's the perfect place for her as well. But enough of me talking about AEW. Let's get straight down with the Dynamite review. Of course, as I stated at the top of the review, there is a new set, new design for AEW. I personally absolutely love this new design. Of course, they hired a new producer. It was the old vice president, I believe, of producing. I think it was, what's his name, Mike Mansberry. If I got the name wrong, please. I apologize, but I think it's Mike Mansberry. That's his name. And a lot of people, especially in the WWE camp, viewed him as basically, this guy is like the successor to Kevin Dunn. So this was definitely a huge hiring for AEW. And definitely we saw a lot of the changes on the production side for AEW. I liked the production of Dynamite throughout these years, but, as you want to grow your company, of course, you want to make these changes. And I feel like, these are the changes for the better. A lot of people crapped on the graphics for Dynamite because of the fact that it looked at WWES, but last I checked, WWE does not own the colors of red and blue. Yeah, you may think of Raw and SmackDown, or hell, even the Survivor Series graphics, but who gives a shit? It's only the Dynamite graphics. I think it looks pretty dope. The set looks amazing. Now, we do not know if the Rampage set is going to look different. My guess, it's most likely going to be looking the same. But, when it comes to stages and sets in wrestling, I am a huge fan of that. I'm really picky on those types of things because I think presentation is key in wrestling. But overall, I absolutely dug the set for Dynamite. And I'm really looking forward to what they're going to be doing for the next couple of, years to come. So we kicked off Dynamite with Chris Jericho versus Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks right now is on a roll. Of course, Ricky Starks won the World Title Eliminator Tournament, in which he won a title shot for MJF's AEW World Championship. But at the same time, he also won the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal, in which he also granted a shot at MJF's Dynamite Diamond Ring. So he wrestled MJF at AEW's Winter is Coming. And overall, this was a fantastic match. I absolutely enjoyed the match. Really good chemistry between both MJF and Ricky Starks. And one thing that I've always thought about Ricky Starks is an absolute star. And you know how Ricky Starks always touts himself as absolute. He's absolutely a star, considering the fact that this guy has the athletic ability, he has the charisma, and he looks like he has the star power. And you can definitely build a company around somebody like Ricky Starks. One thing that I really want AEW to do when it comes to Ricky Starks is continue to build this guy up, because Ricky Starks has the potential to be the next big thing in your company. MJF is now the thing in AEW. He is the top guy in the promotion right now. But at the same time, you want to build up Ricky Starks so he can get to that main event level. And I feel like so far, they're doing it really well. And of course, with him feuding with somebody like Chris Jericho, in which Chris Jericho has had a fantastic 2022 in ring wise, the guy has been in the best shape of his life, and he shows no signs of slowing down at all. Him wrestling Chris Jericho was definitely the right way to go, and I definitely do see this feud happening in the near future. But, of course, the story of this match is basically after the promo that Ricky Starks cut last week on Dynamite, Chris Jericho came out along with, of course, both Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia. Basically, Jericho wanted him to join the Jericho Appreciation Society, but instead, Ricky Starks refused because he already saw through Chris Jericho's bullshit. So that led to this match right here. Overall thoughts on this match, it was basically everything you would have thought about, a match involving Chris Jericho and Ricky Starks. A lot of great in-ring action, great chemistry, and great psychology between both of these guys. We get an arm drag by Jericho, followed by a shoulder tackle by Starks. Jericho goes for a slap. Starks fights back with a couple of right hands of his own. Chris Jericho retreats to the outside, but then Starks comes outside. He hits a couple of chops and sends Jericho to the steel steps. Then he sends Jericho back in the ring. At this point, Jericho is in control. He hits a couple of chops and rights into the corner. We get a chop by Jericho. Then after that, we get a kick by Ricky Starks, followed by an overhand chop. After that, Starks walks up the top rope. He looks like he's going for his own modified version of Undertaker's Old School, which looked pretty dope. He did this before. I believe it was at Double or Nothing. Correct me if I'm wrong. He did that same spot. He hits a sledge, which looked like a sledge, drops him down to the mat. We get a cover and a near fall. We get a chop by Starks. At this point, Matt Menard interferes. Then Jericho regains his control into the match. Jericho manages to hit a suplex on Starks on the floor, which looked absolutely brutal. Once we're back from commercial break, Jericho is in control. He sends Starks into the corner, but then Starks fires back with a clothesline of his own. Both exchange chops. Starks then proceeds to gain the advantage. He hits a drop kick on Jericho, and then he hits a kick on... we get a kick by Starks, I should say. Starks then follows up with a Liger bomb on Chris Jericho. We get a cover and a near fall, but then Angelo Parker and Matt Menard interfere. But then Jericho... it looked like Starks was about to hit the spear, but Jericho counters, and he manages to hit the line salt, but then Ricky Starks gets the knees up. After that, Starks goes to the middle rope, and he lands on his feet with the moonsault. It looked like he was selling his knee at that point during the match. Both exchange shots. We get a thrust kick by Starks. We get a cover and a near fall. Jericho manages to hit the code breaker, but then Jericho tries to hit the Judas effect, but then Ricky counters with a Rochambeau attempt, but then Jericho counters back with his Walls of Jericho submission, of course. Starks then tries to go to the rope, and at this point, it looked like Ricky Starks was about to tap out, but Jericho pulls him back. So he goes to the rope, but then Jericho pulls him back, and then you kind of had no hope for Ricky Starks at that point during the match. But then Angelo Parker makes the distraction. Matt Menard then hits Starks with the baseball bat, and it looked like very well that Chris Jericho was definitely going to get the win, but the referee checks that if he was passed out, but then Starks is back in the match. So that means that basically led to the entire crowd in Seattle to just go absolutely berserk for Ricky Starks. And if there was one highlight about this entire show, was that Seattle, the crowd in Seattle was fantastic. Now, this is a common thing with AEW. Every time when AEW goes to a new market, the crowd is just absolutely insane. I remember the first time they went to Jersey last year, which I attended, by the way. The atmosphere at the Prudential Center was amazing. Every new market that they always go to, great atmosphere within the crowd. But after that, after Jericho, basically all the shenanigans happen. The referee checks that he's back. If he passed out, Starks is back in. Starks then turns him around. Then we get an inside cradle by Starks. We get a near fall. We get a tornado DDT by Starks on Jericho. Then Starks proceeds to fight off Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. Starks manages to hit the spear, and we get a cover, and Ricky Starks gets the win and beats Jericho clean in the center of the ring. Overall, great match, but we're not done. After the match, what happens is the Jericho Appreciation Society attack Ricky Starks, so it looks like this feud is not over. Then Action Andretti comes out. If you guys do not know who Action Andretti is, you guys should know. Action Andretti, he was basically viewed upon as a random jobber on Dynamite. And what happened was he wrestled a fantastic match with Chris Jericho in which he actually got the win against Chris Jericho, which was probably one of the best things I've ever seen AEW do. If you want to make a star like that, you look at a guy like Action Andretti. But, of course, Action Andretti constantly was on the help for Ricky Starks. So he comes out. He comes in with the chair. He takes everybody out, but then Anna Jay and Ty Mello come in. Then what happens is Anna Jay takes away the chair from Andretti, and Ty Mello from behind basically gives him the low blow. After that, 2.0 take out the table. Then the JAS takes Starks. Hager grabs Starks on the apron, and he proceeds to powerbomb him through the table. So it looks like this feud between Chris Jericho and Chris Jericho and Ricky Starks is far from over. But this is definitely a feud I am definitely invested in. Again, this feud is definitely, I feel like the sole purpose of this feud is to just keep the momentum high for Ricky Starks, because I feel like AEW sees the potential in where Ricky Starks can go to. And I mean, if anything, they should already see the potential that he has, considering the fact that this guy, ever since he walked in the door to AEW, has basically delivered, just fantastic stuff. He delivered fantastic content, if that makes any sense. Ricky Starks, again, his charisma, his promos, everything about him just screams star. And I feel like AEW is definitely on the right path when it comes to Ricky Starks, and he'll definitely be a main event guy in the near future, especially after that match he had with Jericho. All right, we got the Hangman Page in-ring interview with Tony Schiavone. So if you guys do not know, Hangman Page is currently somewhat in a feud with Jon Moxley. It all started, of course, back before Full Gear, in which Hangman Page wrestled Jon Moxley for the AEW World Title, which basically led to the match being, stopped after Moxley gave Hangman to Larry, and Hangman unfortunately got knocked out. But thankfully, he's back to recovery, and he's back 100%, thankfully. So basically, this whole feud has been about Hangman Page basically wanting revenge against Jon Moxley, which is definitely the right way to go. If you have something there, if you have a story that can work, take advantage of it, and I feel like that's what AEW definitely did when it comes to Hangman Page and Jon Moxley. And it also gives Jon Moxley something to do after he lost to MJF. We get an in-ring interview, of course. Tony Schiavone, of course, asks Hangman Page, the question remains if he can still go in the ring. Hangman replies that there is nothing more than he wanted to do than to tell everyone that he can go. But as of today, he is not medically cleared to compete. He's been told that if he comes out tonight or on Friday and fights or brawls with Moxley, that will set him back one other week. If he wants to... he basically wants the same thing that Mox wants. Next week at the Forum, and it looks like, again, they're building up to that big Forum show. So next week at the Forum, he gets, when he gets that last brain scan, then he will be cleared. Next week at the Forum, he doesn't care. He will fight him, and he will knock his dick in the dirt. That is the exact words that Hangman Page said. Moxley comes out. Of course, great entrance by Jon Moxley, by the way. I always dig his entrance. I'm wearing a Jon Moxley shirt right now. Jon Moxley comes out. He gets the microphone, says that he is surprised that he made it tonight after everything that he's been through. He's getting sick of taking something so beautiful and treating it like an accident. He's tired of all the sympathy that Hangman Page gets. We get, so after this, there was a little issue. I don't want to say like major issue, but there was definitely a production and technical issue. So what happens is while Moxley is speaking on the microphone, you have the crowd chant, "We can't hear you." So after that, Moxley gets another microphone, right? He stops what he's saying. He gets another microphone, and he says once, basically, he says Seattle once, not as loud. Says Seattle twice, basically much louder, and he gets a huge pop. So as soon as that huge pop is going on, what happens is he's about to basically state what he said earlier and continue on what he was going to say. But what happened after that was the crowd was just so damn loud that Moxley ended up fucking up, and he said fuck twice on the microphone, which was funny as hell. Technical difficulties on everybody's part. Hey, shit happens. But Moxley, he says, go Seahawks, which is the funniest thing ever. Then he continues on what he was talking about. He thinks of wrestling with a torn tricep. No one has been knocked down more times in this business than him. When he thinks of places that he had to heat, Hangman plays the victim because he got knocked out. It makes him sick. Hangman asks if he's mad because he thinks it's about when he knocked him out, or he's been knocked down more times than he can count. Hangman says that he's been knocked out by strangers, and hell, he's been knocked out by his best friends. He would never have been mad at him for that, but he was pissed when he called him out and he made a joke. He nearly took his career away from him, and he wanted to basically, joke about it. In the moment, he felt like in the moment, Jon Moxley felt threatened, and if he knew that Moxley got knocked out, the first thing he would do is come back for revenge, and that is what Hangman is set to do. So after that, he says that he had a month to stew on what he said to him, and a month to stew on how he knocked him out with the lariat. Says that he had to in the chamber with his name on it, and he gets them at the Forum. At this point, Moxley is pissed off. Moxley then responds that the only joke that is funny around the fact that he thinks that next time is indifferent, says that Hangman's little punk ass does not belong in the ring with him, and next week he's going to make sure that this time he does not get back up. So it looks like next week in LA, we're going to be getting Jon Moxley versus Hangman Page, which with I believe it's for the first time. I don't think. Oh wait, no, never mind. My dumbass. They did wrestle before. I'm stupid. My apologies. I was about to say they're going to be wrestling for the first time. No, they wrestled already in the match. That's basically what the story is about. I'm stupid. My apologies. But yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, we got Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley in a non-title match, of course. But we got Hangman Page and Jon Moxley. Overall, I'm excited for this match. I'm excited to see where this goes. Now, we do not know which Hangman is medically cleared in kayfabe. We do not know what they're going to be doing story-wise. But I'm definitely interested because of the fact that they're basically utilizing something that legitimately happened with the lariat that Jon Moxley hit, and it accidentally knocked out Hangman Page in that title match a few months ago. And they're using that to their advantage, and they're making a story out of it, which I absolutely really enjoy. And I think, it creates the tension when it comes to the story between Jon Moxley and Hangman Page, because keep in mind, these are guys that did not have a feud together in AEW. This is the first time that they're feuding together. And I think this is definitely going to be one of those feuds for the ages. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but this is going to be this is definitely going to be a very interesting feud, in my opinion. All right. We got a video package, of course, for the main event with Samoa Joe and Darby Allin, which, of course, happened in the main event in which Darby Allin won the TNT Championship. And there was a lot of mixed feelings about it, but I'll give you guys my thoughts on that later on. We have the Acclaimed, yes, the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Acclaimed Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, taking on JEFF, JARRETT, Jeff Jarrett, and Jay Lethal. Now, the story of this match is these guys have been feuding for the past couple of weeks, and one thing to come out of this feud is what happened last week. So last week, the Acclaimed released a music video, basically because you guys know, of course, Max Caster loves to rap. And they said a lot of, they kind of went personal when it came to Jeff Jarrett. They talked about how, quote unquote, allegedly, Kurt Angle basically, talk about the whole Kurt Angle situation with Jeff Jarrett, all that shit. They talked about GFW, TNA, how Jeff Jarrett drew no dimes. That led to basically Karen Jarrett, which is, of course, Jeff Jarrett's wife, going on social media and creating a whole, basically scene about this. At that point, we did not know if this whole thing was real or fake, but it looked like this whole thing was just to play into the match, and especially with this. The Acclaimed did not hold back in their rap. Max Caster did not give a shit about what he said in the rap this week before the match, which was hilarious. Which, if you guys want to listen to it, go watch it. It's hilarious, man. Like he added more fuel to the fire, which was funny as hell. But yeah, man, we had the tag team title match between Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal and the Acclaimed. Pretty quick match, but there was the ending of the match. Originally, I was going to get pissed off about the ending of the match, but it actually worked in their favor, and I really liked the finish of the match. Jeff slaps Caster in the beginning. Bowens goes after Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett proceeds to regain control. Jarrett tags in. He works on Bowens. At this point, Caster is a legal man. He's in control, and he applies the ankle lock. Yes, Max Caster applies the ankle lock on Jay Lethal. A little nod right there to Kurt Angle, which is funny. The Acclaimed hit the Scissor Me Timbers. Then after that, Jeff Jarrett flips them both off. After that, they take Jeff Jarrett, and then they hit the Scissor Me Timbers on Jeff Jarrett. Then Billy Gunn is in the ring. They do the whole scissoring thing, which is super over with the crowd right now. Billy Gunn gets kicked out. Once we're back from commercial break, Jay Lethal is in control over Anthony Bowens. Jay goes to the top, and then he misses the elbow drop. Jarrett takes out Caster when he tries to tag Bowens, but then Bowens fights back. We get a side slam by Bowens. At this point, the hot tag is made. After that, we get a backdrop by Bowens. We get a super kick. Then he takes out Lethal onto the outside. Caster goes to the top, and he manages to hit the crossbody. After that, we get a cover and a near fall. Caster fights off Jarrett, and then Caster goes to the top, but then Jarrett pushes him onto the outside. We get a double team combination by both Lethal and Jarrett. Then Jay applies the figure four on Bowens, but then Satnam Singh comes in and throws Caster onto the ring steps. That leads to Satnam Singh and everybody else basically getting banned. Then what happens later on in the match? So what happens is basically, I believe it was, my notes got fucked up. So we get a double team combination by Jarrett and, and Lethal. After that, what happens is this finish actually was absolutely fantastic. So I believe Lethal hit the lethal injection. And what happened after that, I believe he covered one of the members of the Acclaimed. I'm not sure who. I forgot who because my notes clearly blacked out on me. What happened basically was when Lethal, I believe, was going for the pin. I think it was Lethal that got the pin. Correct me if I'm wrong. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. My notes just completely deleted. Well, not my whole notes, just for that particular match. But basically, it looked like Lethal was going to go for the pin, and one of the members of the Acclaimed actually put their foot on the rope, but then Sanjay Dutt actually took the foot out, which led to a whole fiasco happening, and that led to, quote-unquote, Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett getting the win and winning the tag team championships. Now, if they actually legit went forward with Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal winning the tag team titles, I would have been legitimately upset, considering the fact that you built the Acclaimed up for so long now that they lose to Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal, two guys that are a constant criticism, especially Jeff Jarrett. Now, I'm a Jeff Jarrett fan. I'm not one of those guys that hates on Jeff Jarrett, but the majority of the fan base on the internet do not like Jeff Jarrett being in AEW. That's my opinion. I disagree with that, but that's just the thing. But but this was very creative on what they did. So after that, they had multiple referees because of course they were basically banning Billy Gunn and everybody else. So there was multiple referees there. What happens is Aubrey Edwards was the only referee throughout the entirety of the referees that came out that saw the shenanigans that Sanjay Dutt pulled. So what happens is basically she says that the match will continue. And what happens is the Acclaimed end up getting the win at the end of the day, and they retain the AEW Tag Team Championships. Overall thoughts on this finish, I really enjoyed the finish. I thought this was very creative. I loved how they swerved the audience, and I don't mean that in a Vince Russo manner, because when it comes to Vince Russo and his swerves, no, please. But when it comes to the quote-unquote swerve that they did, the crowd was legitimately pissed. And as soon as Aubrey Edwards saw that and she said that this match will continue, the crowd just went ballistic, and that was great to see. But, yeah, man, the Acclaimed are the AEW Tag Team Champions, and they will remain the AEW Tag Team Champions. Now, after this, where does it look like they will go? I do not think that the Acclaimed will drop the AEW Tag Team titles anytime soon. But I will say this. There is only one team that has to take the titles from them, and that team is FTR. Because FTR has been on a run of a lifetime throughout 2022. They won the AAA, IWGP, and Ring of Honor Tag Team titles, and they lost all of those belts in the span of a month. They lost them to the Briscoes in that fantastic dog collar match at Final Battle. They dropped those AAA tag the AAA Tag Team titles at a AAA show, and they dropped the IWGP Tag titles at Wrestle Kingdom. So, at this point, what is the Acclaimed going to be doing? I'm not sure. They got a title match at Battle of the Belts tonight, which of course they will be retaining. But I feel like the team to beat them is definitely FTR. But it's only a matter of when, not if. I feel like FTR will win the AEW tag titles. I just don't think the Acclaimed should drop the titles right now, considering the fact that they are super over with the audience. All right. We got Jungle Boy backstage and says next week him and Hook will team up together against Big Bill, a.k.a. W. Morrissey, and Lee Moriarty. That will be a definitely interesting match. We got Bryan Danielson versus Tony Nese. This match was absolutely fantastic. Bryan Danielson got a mega. And when I say mega, I mean a mega pop, because this guy was so over in Seattle because, of course, he is from the state of Washington. So he comes out. Nese immediately goes for the attack. He misses a moonsault, and he hits the knee. We get a cover engineer fall. We get repeated rights by Tony Nese. We get a couple of chops and kicks by Danielson. Danielson is in control. We get a couple of kicks by Danielson. We get a roll-up by Nese, and then we get a near fall. After that, we get a couple of chops and kicks by Danielson. Danielson is in control. We get a couple of kicks by Danielson. We get a roll-up by Nese, and then we get a near fall. And then he throws Danielson into the corner with the buckle bomb. And then Tony Nese lands on his knee into the corner. Danielson then manages to hit the knee. After that, he kicks his head in, and then he applies the submission. Danielson gets the win in the match. Apparently, Danielson actually wanted to wrestle Tony Nese for their Seattle debut, which is great to see. Tony Nese is fantastic. A lot of people do not give Tony Nese a lot of credit. But Tony Nese is definitely who he says he is. He's definitely a premier athlete. And I don't mean that I legitimately mean that, because this guy's legitimately really good in the ring. But Danielson gets the win, and then he gets the microphone. He says it's great to be home. Says that he's been feeling a little froggy, and he's ready for another fight. And of course, he is in the middle of a feud with MJF. Of course, what happened at Full Gear? What happened, basically, William Regal, who's no longer with AEW, is now actually a part of WWE. William Regal basically gave MJF the brass knucks and basically turned on the Blackpool Combat Club. And then after that, a couple weeks later, which was like 2 weeks later, MJF introduced his new belt, the Triple B, which I like that, by the way. And he turned on William Regal because of the fact that MJF touts himself as the devil. And number one, the devil is cunning. And number two, the devil always gets what he wants, and he will leave everybody behind. So, yeah, he's currently in a feud with Bryan Danielson, which I'm definitely interested in. So he calls out MJF. And MJF called Bryan Danielson, I should say, brain damaged Bryan. He basically wants him to come to the ring and wrestle him. And he says, yeah, how about no? Unlike him, he doesn't get his rocks off to put his body on the line to entertain the schmucks. He calls Bryan Danielson a mark and talks about how he gets a big fat check in the mail whether he wrestles or doesn't, and says that he is a special attraction, and people obviously, people absolutely love him. They chant his name over and over again, and he was standing there in the back with all. And after that, he says if Lance Storm and Dean Malenko had a child, they would be more charismatic than Bryan Danielson. Says that Bryan Danielson looks like a goat, and he wouldn't be surprised if back in 1981 his mama, his mama Danielson couldn't find a suit. Danielson talks back about his mother, about how many human suitors she has, and talks about how the entire locker room talks about her. So they're going with the whole mama jokes at this point, which is hilarious. And he asks the crowd if they have been his mom's suitors. MJF says that he is the best wrestler in the world, and Triple B proves it because he is the world champion. Unlike Bryan, he is touted at being the best in the world by people who've been in this business. Top names, keep in mind, listen to this. Top names like Disco Inferno, Eric Bischoff, and the smartest man of them all, Jim Cornette. If you guys do not know who those people are, of course, these are people who, let's just say, do not like AEW very much. Everybody knows who these people are. And then Bryan tells him to shut up, says that he hates MJF, and it's time for them to fight. Says that he's trying to smarten him up, and this ain't plain wrestling, it's pro wrestling, MJF says. He says that if he wants a shot, he needs to be number one contender since wins and losses matter in AEW. But correct me if I'm wrong, I do not think that AEW even uses the ranking system anymore because I feel like that thing is completely irrelevant. Says that if he wants to wrestle every week until he says, MJF basically states he has to wrestle every week until February 8th. And if he wins, he will get a shot at the World Championship March 5th in San Francisco at the Revolution pay-per-view. He will agree if he makes the stipulation at Revolution. And he basically challenges MJF to a 1-hour Iron Man match. Take my fucking money. MJF accepts. Then after that, MJF calls him a joke artist. After that, Danielson is running through every single opponent that he puts through in front of him until January 8th. And then Danielson states that he will expose him at Revolution, that he doesn't have the cardio, the footwork, and he will put the nail in the coffin, and he will knock his damn head in. So that was the segment. Overall thoughts on this segment. This was an absolutely fantastic segment overall. Very good stuff by both Bryan Danielson and MJF. I feel like, I always talk about chemistry on this show. I feel like what makes MJF special, one of the things that really make MJF special is the feuds that he is in. Because a lot of the feuds that he's in are with different people. He feuded with Chris Jericho. He feuded with guys like Jon Moxley. Now he's feuding with a guy like Bryan Danielson, who is a technical wrestler. MJF and Bryan Danielson are complete opposites. Now, granted, of course, MJF can wrestle, but Bryan Danielson is basically a master technician in the ring. And I like the fact that, this feud is basically touting at the fact that Bryan Danielson thinks that MJF, can't wrestle the way people think he can wrestle or the way he thinks he can wrestle. I love that idea and I love that feud because of the fact that, number one, it's something different. And a lot of people tend to complain a lot about MJF whenever he's feuding with somebody, that he always puts his opponent through many different opponents week by week by week. And I like the fact that, they're kind of spinning things up a little bit. And really, if you really think about it, I don't think there's, a lot of people complain about, with MJF that he says the same thing over and over and over again. But if you really think about it, when it comes to MJF, quote unquote, in many fans' eyes, thinking that he does everything over and over and over again, what I see is that MJF all the time, whenever he speaks on the microphone, he gets your attention because of how good he is, but always distincts himself every time when he tries to speak on the microphone. And at the end of the day, it benefits MJF in the long run. And it's great to see because of the fact that MJF is just that damn fucking good. He is that damn good at what he does. And this feud with Bryan Danielson is something that I'm genuinely interested in. But also, at the same time, this Iron Man match is another great match that I'm definitely excited to see, considering the fact that, number one, it's an Iron Man match, and, with Bryan Danielson involved, we're basically going to be for an all-out war. All right. We got Swerve Strickland versus AR Fox. AR Fox, of course, is a new signee to AEW. He had, I believe, a couple of matches on Dynamite so far. AR Fox is absolutely fantastic. I'm not really that familiar with AR Fox, but AR Fox looked absolutely fantastic, of course. Swerve Strickland is no longer in a tag team with Keith Lee. He is now basically started this new faction with Rick Ross called the Mogul Affiliates. The Mogul Affiliates, a group that is getting a lot of criticism lately. Valid criticism, I might add. Primarily not because of Swerve, but because of the people that he's affiliated with, people like Parker Boudreaux, and this tattooed freak that AEW still has not given us a freaking name out. He hasn't given us a freaking name. Apparently, he was an ex-baseball player, but he's like tattooed all over the freaking place and stuff. A lot of people are not really too keen on the Mogul Affiliates, but when it comes to my opinion on the whole faction or the whole trio, I'm going to give it time to see where this goes, and maybe in a month or a month or two, I will basically come on here and say whether it works or it doesn't work. I do not know, but a lot of people are not really enjoying it. I can see why, but I'm still giving it a chance. So we get Swerve Strickland and AR Fox. Excalibur on commentary talks about the history that they have in Lucha Underground, which was an old show that aired on LRA Network. Great match overall. We get a right hand by Fox. Swerve picks up Fox, and Fox lands on the apron. We get a couple of moonsaults on the outside, followed by a pump kick by AR Fox. AR Fox then goes for a shooting star onto the outside. Then he goes for a corkscrew brainbuster. A lot of the stuff that he does is very distinctive, and I really enjoy that. Cover and a kick out. Then the tattooed faced individual takes him out without the referee looking. Swerve kicks AR Fox on the jaw on the outside. Then once we're back from commercial break, Swerve and Fox go back and forth with kicks. We get a spinning enziguri by Fox, followed by a back elbow. Later on, Fox gets caught up in a German when trying to hit a cutter, and then Swerve manages to flatline AR Fox. After that, we get a cover by Swerve and a near fall. At this point, Fox is on the top, but then Swerve knocks the ropes down. After that, he takes Fox down, follows up by a stutter step, I think it's what it's called. After that, AR Fox goes for his cutter. Then he goes to the top and manages to hit a 450 splash. Then we get a cover and a near fall. Fox takes Swerve up on the apron. Swerve is on the top, but then Fox goes to the top. But then after that, Parker gives Swerve something. We do not know what he gave him, but then Swerve manages to hit a Death Valley driver onto the apron. He goes to the top and hits the Swerve Stomp, and we get a cover, and Swerve Strickland gets the win over AR Fox. Overall thoughts on this match? Great match overall. Swerve is a fantastic wrestler. The guy, I always said this. I said this even when he was in NXT. When he was in NXT and he started doing the whole hit row thing with, Ashante Adonis, B-Fab, and Top Dollar, I always said this guy is a future WWE champion. Now, of course, he's in AEW now, but that is not going to stop me from saying that this guy is a future world champion. This guy has the potential to have that mainstream appeal, considering the fact that he's also a rapper, and also, be a potential contender for the AEW world title in my eyes in the next couple of years, because this guy is that damn talented, and I feel like the promos that he cuts all the time are very realistic, and he's very charismatic. And I say that a lot about that. Everybody says a lot when it comes to a wrestler, they're charismatic and all that stuff, but I feel like Swerve kind of brings charisma in his own light, and I mean that in the best way possible, because Swerve, every time when he speaks, he's freaking real. Like, he's real whenever he speaks on the microphone. So that's what I really enjoy about Swerve. But hopefully this whole Mogul Affiliates goes on the right track. A lot of people are not really enjoying it, but I will give it a shot and see where this goes. Renee Paquette interviews Saraya, Toni Storm, and Hikaru Shida. Toni Storm's Saraya basically gives the fact that Toni Storm is the best wrestler in the world, and she will be Saraya's partner next week in LA at the Forum. And then you have Hikaru Shida look at Saraya like, what the fuck did you just say? What are my thoughts on this? Do I see this actually being the case? My answer is no. No, it's absolutely not, because Why? Look, with all of the rumors regarding Sasha and the fact that they started building this match weeks prior, almost a month ago, why the hell would AEW just have Toni Storm be the partner for Saraya? That'd be the biggest fail that AEW has done, and you basically have overhyped your audience, in my opinion. I do not think Toni Storm will be Saraya's partner. She will not be Saraya's partner, considering the fact that, number one, you had Hikaru Shida basically look at Saraya with a pissed off look, which leads me to think that we're leading towards a heel turn regarding Hikaru Shida, and she will basically attack Toni Storm before the match even starts, which leads to Mercedes Moné coming in as the mystery partner for Saraya. That's what I see. Now, if Mercedes does come, now Mercedes did make her debut in New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom, and she basically targeted Kairi for the IWGP Women's World Championship, and they will be wrestling at a future date in early February. Now, in the post-show press conference for Wrestle Kingdom, Mercedes did state that she will be going on a world tour. Now, what does that mean? Is she going to be traveling all over the world? Is she just going to be doing freelancing? We do not know. But the one thing that we all need to take into consideration is that Mercedes, a.k.a. Sasha Banks, is the type of wrestler, female wrestler, that has that crossover appeal. She has that legit crossover appeal. And if you do not believe that, clearly you are blind, considering the fact that she has gone to like every major red carpet premiere for a movie. Like she would come out to every freaking premiere with Naomi. Like she has that legit mainstream crossover appeal, and she could easily go to Hollywood tomorrow. Like Mercedes is a huge star, and I think that AEW bringing in Mercedes is definitely a positive for the company. The only question is, if they bring in Mercedes, what are they going to be doing with her? That is the thing that we need to ask ourselves. She needs to be their top priority when she comes in. That's all I'm going to say. But I think Mercedes will show up next week, and I think, it's going to be a big, big deal. All right. We have the Guns FTR funeral. Let's skim through this real quick because I'm running out of time. They talk about how FTR won the AAA, IWGP, and ROH tag team titles, but not the AEW tag team titles. They called themselves 7-star FTR, but there were 10, they were 10 stars in their heart. As of 2022 is coming to an end, their week-old dad bods couldn't handle it anymore. They lost all 3 of their belts and even started a podcast that no one listens to, which I genuinely disagree, because I listened to that first show with Dex Harwood, and I do not believe those reports at all saying that the AEW locker room is upset about what Dex said, because there's nothing wrong in what Dex said, considering the fact that he basically said that he wants everybody to make money. And if you guys do not know what I'm talking about the whole CM Punk situation. Let bygones be bygones. When CM Punk comes back from injury, make money off this whole situation. But, he talks about how they built a legacy in 10 years and the Guns destroyed it in 10 minutes. He tells everyone to stand up as they remember FTR in a moment of silence. FTR's music plays, but they fooled everyone. After that, the Guns say that they will never work in AEW again, and they are the new living legends with the new best tag team in the world. Top Guns out. All right. After that, we got Jade Cargill and Red Velvet versus Sky Blue and Kiera Hogan. Kiera Hogan is no longer with the baddies, and AEW is doing this whole storyline with Jade Cargill and Red Velvet, in which Red Velvet is looking like she's starting to break away from Jade Cargill. It's a very interesting story that they have here. This was not a bad match. Usually I tend to criticize a lot of AEW's women's matches, and it's not the women's wrestlers' fault. It's the fact that AEW does not give enough time to the women. Granted, they only have 3 hours of television, but I feel like, you need to put more focus on the women's division if you really want it to succeed. And I feel like AEW realistically hasn't really done that. But I will say this match wasn't bad. And also, they had Jamie Hayter versus Hikaru Shida a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite, and that match was an absolute banger. And also, that match was the main event. But we had Jade Cargill and Red Velvet versus Sky Blue and Kiera Hogan. I'm not going to go through the match spot by spot, but basically what happens is Red Velvet basically leaves Jade Cargill out in the dark, and it looked like Jade was going to lose the match, but Jade manages to hit the pump kick, and she actually got the win on her own. Now, where does this lead to? Now, I feel like it will definitely lead to Red Velvet definitely splitting from Jade Cargill. But the question that we all need to ask ourselves about Jade Cargill is, who is going to beat Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship? Because I feel like there's like nobody right now on the AEW Women's roster that is built up enough to have, a win over Jade Cargill, considering the fact that she has held that TBS title for a legit year now, and nobody has touched her. So that is a question we need to ask ourselves. Who the hell is going to beat Jade Cargill? A lot of people are saying maybe it could be Chris Statlander. Hell, it could even be Red Velvet. We do not know, but I feel like AEW realistically needs to focus more on who needs to beat Jade Cargill. Because, a lot of people would say it would be Red Velvet, but I genuinely do not believe it would be Red Velvet. But, again, they really need to focus a lot on that. We got Jeff, Jarrett, and Jay Lethal versus the Acclaimed in a no-holds-barred at Battle of the Belts. We got Darby Allin versus Samoa Joe for the TNT Championship. Samoa Joe, of course, won the TNT Championship in a triple threat match between him, Wardlow, and Powerhouse Hobbs at Full Gear. And Samoa Joe has been on this run with the TNT Championship, and if you really want to think about it, he's kind of reinvented himself and started to call himself the new king of television, which I've genuinely been enjoying. I think the promos that Samoa Joe was cutting was fantastic, and I think it gives Samoa Joe something to do, in my opinion. But he not only holds the TNT Championship, he also holds the ROH TV title. So, quick match. Joe puts his hands on Nick Wayne. Of course, Nick Wayne is the son of the wrestler that trained Darby Allin. So he puts his hands on Nick Wayne. I believe he's actually signed currently to an AEW contract, but he's still relatively young. If you guys haven't seen Nick Wayne, he's been running the waves in the independent scene, and he's been wrestling a lot of matches in GCW. I actually watched him live at the Showboat. It was a great experience. He's a fantastic wrestler, and I think he's going to be a big deal in the future. But Joe puts his hands on Nick Wayne. Darby immediately takes out Samoa Joe. Darby uses the skateboard as a weapon, and he grabs the ladder and sets it up on the stage. He hits a senton on Joe. Both get back in the ring. At this point, the bell rings. Joe is on the outside, but then Darby is in control. Joe then catches Darby and drives Darby to the steel steps. Once we're back from break, Joe is in control. Joe misses an elbow drop. After that, Darby misses the... not misses. He applies a sleeper. Joe then counters, dropping Darby down. Then Joe hits Darby with a double knee breaker. Then we get a kick by Joe, followed by a senton. After that, Joe applies a single leg crab. After that, Darby counters the muscle buster. Later on in the match, Darby tries to hit the stunner, but then Joe applies a sleeper hold. Darby then goes for the sting. Basically, he pulls a sting by going berserk. After that, Darby manages to hit the code red after that. He goes to the top and hits the coffin drop. He goes to the top again, hits a coffin drop. We get a cover, and Darby Allin wins the TNT Championship in his hometown of Seattle, Washington. Overall thoughts on this match. This was a great match. I definitely enjoyed this match for what it was. Now, there has been a lot of mixed reactions to this match, primarily because of the fact that a lot of people are saying that Samoa Joe lost the title a little bit too early. And I can see that argument because of the fact that Samoa Joe, I think his TNT title run has flourished, in my opinion. I think I've relatively been enjoying his TNT Championship run and this whole king of television that he's calling himself right now. I think it's been great. But I also understand why they put the belt on Darby, considering the fact that, number one, Darby, it's his hometown of Seattle. Of course, you want to give him the nod. But also, at the same time, realistically, what has Darby been doing throughout 2022? He really hasn't been doing much. So, overall, it's great to see Darby back in the TNT title picture. And hopefully this gets the TNT championship back in a state in which it's treated more important. Because if there's one complaint that I have about AEW in 2022, it was the devaluation of the TNT Championship, because the TNT Championship, when it first debuted back in 2020, when Cody had it, he treated it like it was the World Championship. But then in 2021, it was somewhat treated the same way, but in 2022, it went to complete dog shit. So definitely, hopefully, in 2023, AEW improves the state of the TNT Championship now that Darby Allin holds the belt. But yeah. That was my AEW Dynamite review. Overall thoughts on this show. This show was absolutely fantastic. Of course, it's a new era in AEW, and I think that they knocked it out of the park. I really enjoyed what they put out. I think that AEW is off to a great start, and it's only going to get better next week because, of course, next week is their show at the Forum. Next week's show is going to be stacked, so here's the card for next week. We got Bryan Danielson versus Konosuke Takeshita, which is going to be fantastic. Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter takes on Saraya and quote-unquote Toni Storm, which I doubt it will be. It will most likely be Mercedes Moné. Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley, if Hangman Page is cleared to compete. Jungle Boy and Hook taking on Big Bill and Lee Moriarty. The finals of the Best of 7 series, Escalera de la Muerte. Death Triangle versus the Elite for the Trios Championship. So it's going to be a stacked card. Really, really, really stacked card next week on Dynamite. I'm definitely looking forward to that show. But yeah, that was my AEW Dynamite review from January 4th, 2022. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more videos right here on the Wrestle Havoc podcast on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the Squared Circle. And as always, it is Flamin' Rick signing out.